Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Sokratis, Sinopoulos, for being the guest tonight. We talking before with Sokratis, preparing uh, the talk today. We thought that it would maybe would follow a slightly different way than we talked last week with Ross. So we thought to start the conversation, already a conversation in a form, let's say, of a small like interview, or by some questions that I would put. And of course, Socrates can talk, also can take the conversation wherever he wants. Basically, it's a presentation more about his work and his life, so it felt a bit natural to do it like that. Um, and yes, and so we can start the conversation about talking about the musicianship and the let's say the life story of Socrates maybe, and then at some point we can of course include everyone and with questions, comments, or any other things you have to share. So thank you, Socrates, for being here.
Thank you, Christos, for inviting, and thank you all, dear friends, for being here. I know some of you live, some others through social media, and I'm very happy to be here as a guest of this great project, and also thanks to Apostolos Maris and his Music Steps organization and all the participants of this project. So yes, you decided with Christos that we could start some kind of an interview, although we are not that many. So, and well, we're all connected with music. So maybe a more open discussion would be helpful for everybody, or maybe you have specific things that you would like to talk about. But to start with, I would like to talk just a little bit about my general view, world view of things and music, of course, because this will make other things make sense, more sense later on. So I started like everybody else, learning music in a way that goes deep in details and traditions and musical styles. And I feel great about that. I still do it, actually. And in order to do this and to be more scientific on things, you have to narrow what you are studying to go deeper. And at the same time, you have to point out the differences that the thing that you study, what differentiates the object of your study from something else. For example, what differentiates the vocal style of Bulgaria from the vocal style of northern Greece. And of course, this is the way to learn things and go as deep as you want, as you can and you want, and of course to work really on the styles of music. Well, it's been two decades, the last 2 decades, but I think that was working in my mind and soul since I was very, very young. On the other, I mean, lately I have realized, and this is the way, the worldview I was talking about, that looking into similarity, when we go scientifically into something, we forget about similarities. We forget that we are connected. We forget that we are all humans around here. We share the same DNA. We forget the connections of the styles I talked about, or the musical traditions. In other words, this is the instrument I have very close by. I haven't touched it for some time now. So when I see this instrument, it's a lira. it's a primitive lira, old lira from the Macedonian region. So the first question that would come to our minds would be, okay, it's a lira, but what are the differences from the Cretan lira and the classical Kemenche or the Bulgarian Gadurka, etc., etc.? Okay, we can name the differences, but we should also not forget that all these instruments are not just relatives. They are the same instruments with different uh, paths of evolution. And another thing I see when I see this instrument also, and this I find it very useful in music too. It's to place it on the time axis and realize that this is an old instrument. And looking at the old paintings, I don't know what, realize that it's there for 1,000 years, the same shape. And if you go back, maybe you can find connections with ancient monochords, dichords, and harps, and I don't know what. And at the same time, by placing it in the time sequence, on the time sequence, you can see its future too. Its future, it's the nyckelharpa they play in the Scandinavia, where instead of the fingers, they use these wooden pieces, that they press. What an idea! It is just to in order to play polyphony on this instrument. And I see the future of nyckelharpa, the hardigardi, for example. So all these instruments that I mentioned make sense and connect with each other. That usually, even when I mentioned recently to a hardigardi player, oh, your instrument is an ancestor of my lira, she was looking at me with trying to understand what I meant. And you know what? It doesn't, we don't, it's just the idea, although we can prove that the evolution of this instrument goes like that, but still, it's not about proving it. It's about understanding and connecting things all together, both in space, but also in time. Thank you, Christos.
Nice. Okay, you have started from the end. I like it. Like but yeah, it's something. By the way, I hope the connection lasts because we are having a very strong storm here. It's raining and it's a thunderstorm. Place where I live. I hope my connection lasts. So in case the connection drops, I will try to be again online in a few minutes. I hope because I live in the mountain, so it's a very strong rain and storm. Anyway, Sokratis, I would have some questions or comments about what you said, but if you don't mind, I would like to ask some questions about the start, going from the end to the start, like because many times, like, we're talking with people that are studying traditional music nowadays of how they learned, and we're talking about the difference between oral traditions and more, let's say, maybe conservatories or schools. And I know that the time when I started to learn this music, when I started to play the nate, was around 2000. But I know that you were there before. So I would be very interested in knowing a bit like your first contacts with learning to play music, but also listening to music. What was your, let's say, your musical, the things you listened in, maybe in your family, or maybe in the place where you lived, or in the places you lived?
Okay. So the place has no connection because it was a city, Athens, so no local music. But still, it was because of my family that since I was a kid, I was connected with, with old musical traditions. I call them like that, which it was, and not because they were listening at home, but because they were interested in, for their kids, me and my sister, to be educated, to have a broad musical education. So we did the usual things like conservatory, playing the guitar for some years actually. But since I was 7 or 8. I was very lucky for that, thanks to my parents, to be a member of a children choir, the only one at the time in Athens, where our teacher Yannis Tsiamoulis was teaching us Greek folk songs and Byzantine music theory and chanting too. With all the dancers involved and all this stuff. So I had all this music in my ears since I was very young, and that made very easy the transition to the instruments that I did when I was 14, learning the lira of Istanbul with Ross Daly as my teacher. And at the same time, I picked up the lute also without any lessons, but having the guitar as a background technically and all this music in my ears, it just moved very fast. That was the time that I got interested because of the instruments with the art music of Istanbul and Eastern traditions, North Africa, Middle East, Iran, even India. That was thanks to Ross Daly, of course, and Balkans too. So this is the background, but at the same time, I was always open to playing with musicians that were asking for that, or it just happened and they were coming from other styles of music, even like more, let's say, contemporary things. Well, even contemporary composers, but even Greek song.
Sorry, if I can interrupt you, because when we talk many times about our roots, of course, we talk about family and society and the things that are before us. But I was at some point I was thinking also that even the first things we've listened to when we are kids, even if it's the radio or so from what you're describing, like even you were very, very young and you had contact with traditional music and dances. Did you, because we were going to talk about this afterwards, about your traveling in Europe and playing like different things. Did you have, did you hear even in the radio or in the television things that were like not traditional, like classical music or rock or jazz or Greek songwriters or things like that?
Yes, of course. Sorry for not mentioning that. Yes, of course. I was like a normal kid of my time. It was the time of what was, okay, lots of pop, American pop, but still, it was the break dance movement at the time. But still classical music, I was listening a lot. Greek songwriters and all kinds of music too. So where was I?
Yeah, you were saying that after you studied like with Ross and you opened like your interest to different kinds of music, that you also collaborated with contemporary composers or.
Yes, so with all kinds of music, even with well, they called themselves what was the ethnic jazz group, a kind of famous group, ESs at the time in
Yeah,
Greece.
I think that was when I first saw you live. I think it was 97, can it be, that you came to Thessaloniki with the ESs?
Yes,
That was
yes.
long before I ever heard of Ney or of Kemense or even Ross, I think, and came to a concert in Thessaloniki.
Do you remember me struggling with the volume and the
No,
and
no,
the electrical guitar
no.
and bass?
I know.
Yeah, but at the same time, I was playing lots of folk music too. Of course, that was well, mainly I was playing folk music from in groups, mainly of my. I call her my teacher to Domna Samio, who is dead now for more than 10 years. But I was very close to her, so this is where I met all the old generation of local musicians playing all well, as far as we could, all the local styles of music, meaning Greece or the traditions of the refugees from the East. But if there is a musical language which I consider my home, well, this would be for sure, well, two of them, folk traditions of Greece and well, all the neighboring styles like Balkans, even North Africa, Middle East, and also the art music of Istanbul, Turkish classical music, or Ottoman classical music. So these are the languages that, well, I feel I know good enough, and I consider them uh, my musical home.
And Sokratis, because talking about, I mean, what you commented before about the similarities about the instruments, right? About the lira and about how to that. I think you've talked it also. You talked about it another time that sometimes we are very concentrated on noting the differences between styles and what they make them particular. Maybe because it's a, as you said, like a scientific approach. When you're studying something, you're trying to understand how it's different from something else, no? But is it a reason why you talk about why the first thing you say about the similarities? Is it about, is it because maybe in the place where we live, like in the Eastern Mediterranean, which is very close to the Middle East, maybe this is particularly true, that maybe in other parts of Europe or in the world, you've seen that the first thing people say, I mean, because there's a more, let's say in Europe, maybe we could say there's a more a sense of something that is shared, and we don't talk about, are not so consumed by the differences. Is it something you feel is missing?
I didn't understand everything, I think, but if what I understood is that it has this way of thinking has to do with the place that I am living, and I have my uh, whatever music influences, which is true, yes, because uh, well, Greek music is a combination. It's not a combination. It's
Mix,
a
yeah.
mix of different things. Well, recently I was listening, analyzing with our students in the university recordings, or rebetiko recordings, and we're trying to figure out how they blend tempered instruments with non-tempered instruments, playing modal music, where the non-tempered instruments and the voices move freely on the movable frets, while the uh, tempered instruments follow with the tempered notes, and they feel great with that. This is what they did. This is what they recorded. So they were happy with that, and actually, we were happy too. 100 years later, So uh, they didn't have such issues that we sometimes exaggerate about tuning, for example.
No, so what I meant with my question was like many times maybe we are asking, okay, how come you mix this instrument with this instrument and play while they are different? No, I mean, like needing a justification to say that's why I'm doing it. While in other places, maybe, or in other times, it's kind of, I can, like, mixing is it's a kind of it's a right, it's like something that's natural also. It's not just something that I'm doing in a like forcing it, no.
Okay, I understand. I cannot answer that actually, but we started talking about mixing and blending and apples and oranges.
Yeah.
Thank you also, Christos, for the title of this talk. And uh, well, it's not. I don't know if it has to do with the place, but for sure, you know. And talking about new encounters for modal music, it's a personal thing. I mean, I have people around me that I love what they do in music. I mean, and some of them decide put a, I don't like the word border, but put a, it's I mean they feel that they express themselves enough by working in a traditional environment, while others are experimenting with more phenomenally more not connected things. But finally, it's about what you like. It's about, it's a search, it's a work in progress. Some people do it more, overdo it, some others don't do it. So it's a personal journey. And if I talk about myself, I feel I'm in the middle of the road. I don't know where it will end. Recently, I try things that I feel I'm pushing myself to my limits. That's the word, limit, not border. And well, but still, I'm doing several things. So I'm not doing one thing. So I balance myself with other things. And talking about limits, actually, because and musical instruments that we talked before, starting from the lira, I think this is something that interesting to point it out. When we talk about modal music, usually we connect. Well, we talk about the traditions that still use modes in a known in an old way, I would say. For me, all music is modal, anyways, following the previous thinking. But when we talk about modern music and connect modern music with musical instruments, we talk about old instruments, historic instruments, like the instruments I see Dennis has there, like an oud, a lafta, or forget the guitar for now, or the lute you have on your right hand side. And well, these instruments, like the lira I showed you before, they are shaped. They're old instruments, historic instruments. They're shaped centuries ago, most of them, keeping the same tuning, and they were shaped to support the music traditions of the time, which was very similar with the traditions that we still play in the context of old music that we do, even if it's folk or even if it's art music from the traditions of the Arab world or Ottoman music, etc., etc. But musical instruments as tools, they have, they can play more things actually than the things that we need for the old traditions we play. So musical instruments themselves is a tool, is a path to experiment and search for new things that technically, not only technically, but let's speak about technique because I don't want to get confused with that. So, and well, I guess you agree that everybody that the level of the technique that we need to play our traditions, the model traditions, compared to the level of technique needed to other traditions, which are arrive later in time and have compositions specifically for musical instruments, solo or with orchestras, etc., etc., where the level that we need is kind of average. I mean, with an average playing, you can do it. And then it's all about what people say, oh, the soul, and the metaphysical things, which are great too. So the instruments have more things to give us, and we just need to push ourselves and to push our instruments and our technique to find other things, new things that we may then use in the creation of music, even if it's improvisation or composition. And it's interesting because since all this evolution of time exists nowadays altogether, now we have altogether a piano and my lira, which represent a difference of at least 1,000 years gap. And at the same time, we have an arhu in China or a kochek, I don't know what's the name, in Kazakhstan, which is very similar to the lira, by the way, played with the nail. And we have in Italy and in Europe the violin, the modern violin, playing technically crazy stuff, like composed even from Paganini's time or even later. So this whole thing, we coexist and we interact. And by what I said before, I don't mean, for example, something that is happening to play on the erhu, the Chinese erhu, a Paganini, I don't know, concerto, which is happening. And whenever I see it, I really, or similar things, I understand that all this is happening because there's a syndrome of inferiority arriving to the old traditions, saying that, okay, we can do this too. And I was always very negative to these approaches. Well, recently I was speaking with a classical violinist in Germany and talking about all these issues. And he replied with a way that surprised me. And he said, you know what? I have heard these guys and girls, people, musicians playing on the Chinese erhu or other primitive instruments, the most advanced technically pieces for the violin. I mentioned the violin because it's the most advanced technically bowed instrument, at least on the planet, right? And he said, you know what? I, well, I hear something in their uh, interpretation that I like. I don't feel there's something in happening in there that attracts me, he said, the classical violinist. And this what he said made me have second thoughts of how strict I was with the syndrome of inferiority. And I have arrived to a new conclusion that even if it comes from a syndrome of inferiority that people push the technical uh, level on their old historic instruments, well, they arrive somewhere from where other people or the next generation can really something by create something and not reproduce something. So create something which has a personality, their personality, and it's really uh, interesting and it's something that moves music on.
Right. Nice. Maybe if someone has a comment or a question, maybe we can open also the conversation instead of talking the two of us, since as Sokratis said in the beginning, uh, there's not. But Fadil, not you. You make so many. Yes, welcome, Fadil. Yes, please.
Yes, actually, thanks, Ustad. This is thanks, Christos. What you said last thing was really interesting, Socrates. I would like to ask a question and bring an example. You hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the thing of what the musicians should do, like thinking ahead of what shall we bring as something new, experimenting, and I think this is part of the scientific continuous search, right? And it's really great to hear from you about these aspirations and directions. I would give an example of Sharif Muhyiddin Targan, Haidar, who is having the both coexistence, who learned the piano in the early age, the cello, and we recently heard his cello playing after many years looking for it, and the oud, where he played very traditional pieces, his own compositions, and those very advanced violinistic or sort of pieces. And I think when we listen to his takseems or his compositions, we hear something new that is personalized. And I think this clicks with the previous personalization highlight you said, Ustad. How do you see his like story or journey in terms of what you are describing as this coexistence, instruments, old versus new, and so on?
Yes, you are right. Fadil, the musician that you mentioned, was actually himself bringing together. Well, he was and a very good oud player, but with a background, an holistic background of the, well, of with the music of his time that he could understand, and especially one tradition, which is very important because it's the only one who went further to work on polyphony and really made things really complicated on one hand, interesting on the other, sacrificed several things, but still, so having an holistic approach made him what he is. And actually, by the way, let me mention also, I didn't know that some time ago. You know, when we talk about makams and especially Turkish music, like most Turk musicians, there is always one person as a reference, Tamburi Cemil Bey, who recorded so many beautiful things in many instruments at the beginning of the 20th century. And we think of him as the master guru of makam music, that he was born playing you know, in a musical family, playing tambour and singing Amane, I don't know what, but he had also a very strong education of at the conservatory at his time, playing the classical cello and violin, I think. So he was also he had kind of an holistic approach to music. And starting from what Fadil said, I think it's very important uh, if only if you feel like you want to go to explore something unexplored, or at least unexplored from your side, it, it's, I think it's obligatory, the elements that you're going to use, that you should know them deeply and understand them. Otherwise, it will become just a mixture of things, one after the other, but not a real blend with a new taste and your taste and a new color, your color again. And maybe now it starts the philosophical, but maybe it's the people that have this background that need to combine it. Otherwise, I think it depends on what background you have. If you have a complex background, then I mean, you have to blend more things. But if you don't, then you go straight with what you do. And both ways, since you are sincere with yourself, and it is just a sincere, research of yourself and of your sound, it's a very safe and nice way. So in my case, going back to myself, well, it seems it is a complex background, and it was until I was, anyway, I was 30s, in my 30s, that I started to, I had the need to find my voice in there and in the music. And this is where I started working with my three dear friends, colleagues in a group of four. And we played for the first time my musical ideas. I don't even call them compositions. And trying to, well, to put together all the elements of my background. And something else which may be interesting also about myself, my journey again, it was the time that I was trying to push my technique at the limits, at my limits, because the technique is limitless. You can play on a string Paganini, right? And on a flute, everything with one hole, I don't know. So it was the time I was trying to find my voice, my style, and I was trying, uh, well, let's call them different styles, trying to get out of the way you treat modality. For example, try to get out of the way you treat a mode, a makam, the note by note movements, supporting the tonal centers one after the other with slow evolution of music, not slow playing, but slow evolution. So in other words, I try to play over chords, trying to analyze chords in a more jazzy way. And I arrived at a point that, well, I realized that I cannot go any further. My technique cannot go any further, and I don't really have the courage to work more on this technique. I also realized that my instrument was starting to complain about all this. what are you doing? Enough. I also realized that the music I have arrived to is not interesting anymore. It's not my, I didn't find myself in there. And also, I arrived to a point where I couldn't understand this music. I mean, it was too complicated for my uh, understanding. So that was the period that I arrived at my limits. And then, well, I don't want to say I stepped back, but okay, I realized, okay, this is how far we can go from ourselves and from the music and from a historic instrument that I play, which has a personality that we always have to be very careful not to, I mean, to support this personality. Otherwise, there's no need to do all these things with this instrument. We can take a more neutral and modern instrument like a violin or a piano or a cello, I don't know what. So all this research arrived to a place that I since then have put it as a limit, and but still it's a huge space in there still. I mean, there's so many things that I feel I need to explore, and this is where I'm still working on.
Sokrati, can I ask you something? Are you talking about like a time in your personal, let's say, studying and collaborating with different groups, or more specifically about the quartet with the piano, drums, and contrabass that you recorded the two albums with ECM? Or are you talking about, because there are other collaborations you do, you're very often like in Europe playing with different groups, many times with early music. So was this more specifically about the quartet with the piano, or in general?
What I talked about was only, well, mainly about the quartets, but not it's we never recorded it. So it's
Okay,
experiments that, well, I did mostly alone, but even trying to work with them, but it's not printed
great.
uh, uh,
It was
that I
after
did.
Metamodal.
It was before Metamodal, actually. Well, Metamodal describes, anyway, that's another thing, that's another conversation. But Metamodal describes this uh, research. Well, since you mentioned it, this talking, after arriving at this limit, where I tried to change my playing, actually, and I realized that this is my limits. This is what I meant before. I didn't step, well, I stepped back, but I decided that maybe instead of change the playing, maybe change the music a little bit, and trying not to work on, to recreate some modes that we're not very familiar with. So this is, and still play with the old style on more dissonant combinations of notes, things that for me at least where I had never met them. Well, you know what? All this trip isn't, well, I'm still on the beginning, but I have already realized that I arrive from a different path where jazz musicians arrive through the free jazz and uh, the modern jazz. I think it's very similar, but I think it's another question. I would stick, because you mentioned the early music ensemble. Yes, I have how do you say, played,
Yeah.
cooperated with an early music ensemble in France, the La Quéron ensemble, playing John Dolan's Lacrima and some dances. This is completely the opposite, actually, because there, although the idea was to, for me to bring the personality of my instrument as an old instrument too, well, finally, for me, that was the most demanding cooperation musically I have ever done, because it was so hard, because the style of music, of all music in Europe is, how do you say, is locked in a way. That's the way they do it. And of course, you talk about a very tight polyphony of 5 voices, very tight. So although I tried hard, I found very, very few spots in the music to support even a little ornament of our my instrument, our music. Finally, I love this project because we decided to create bridges of improvisations between the composed music, where we brought the two words together, but as a cooperation and as a it was I think I'm sure it was the most demanding, trying to in a style which is there very heavy and already fixed, try to bring in the lira. Well, I'm happy, although it was how do you say, well, it was not it was a crazy decision to do all this, but anyway, we all love it, and there are people actually, well, I'm sure there were people that thought what are they doing there, but I've met many people, actually more people in Europe talk to me about this project than others, that they like this interpretation, and it brings them closer to the old sound, etc., etc.
Right, nice.
Yeah.
Someone would like to ask something or comment?
Can I ask something, Christos?
Yeah, go for it.
Hello. Thank you, Sokratis, for being here. I like all this that you said. It's so the philosophical things that you said. It touched me deeply, and I wanted to ask you if, after all these years, if you find yourself more as, let's say, I say this all the time, as a tube of the universe that the music goes in, and so, as an interpreter, as of the universe music. I don't know, because you said about modal, and I like this. You said that all music is modal. Yes, I I believe this strongly. Even the classical music is very modal. When the that's the composers, the classical composer had this. They were so wise to put violins to play, not pianos to play all this. I mean, so the violins always make the temperate music modal, as you said. And, so the question is, do you feel that Sokratis is playing, or the universe is playing, and you have to move on and all the time and to...
Okay, before I answer your question, I don't know if I can answer it, okay, but let me just to point out about modality and temperament. For me, it has nothing to do. I mean, you can, so modality is the way the way you treat, how can I say, it's a system of modes. And yes, European music, well, at least as the more you go back, the more you realize it. The more you go back in time, the more you realize it. It's a modal music based on the modes which they borrowed from the Eastern Roman Empire, right? And this is why we still write A, B, C, D as the to distinguish the letters and the notes, etc., etc. So modality can exist even in temperament, all right? And now answering your question, you know what? Okay, I this what you mentioned is an approach of other people too. You know what? Playing, okay, you some of you will also agree that the most interesting, the most deep uh, time that you had playing music was when you were lost yourself in there, right? You lost time. Well, you have all experienced that, and it's a great experience. I hope it happened more often to me too. It happens sometimes in concerts for 2 5 minutes. If it's more, I am very thankful. So if we talk about that, the ecstasy, not the ecstasy in terms of energy, but just the connection with the timeless and the yes, then I mean this is what a musician I mean, feels like. So it's not something personal. On the other hand, well, sometimes it's very personal, and sometimes it's very self-centered. So I guess it's up to a musician. I act both ways. Sometimes I realize I put too much myself in front of music, and then I realize I should step back and let the music lead. And I think it has to do also with the music that you play. A very recent example of myself, I was invited to play a very special repertoire in a very special venue. The venue was a church, an Orthodox church, an active church, where it's not very often to do that. And the repertoire was Byzantine sacred music. And I was asked to, again, to do the bridges, the taxims between the modes, the 8 modes that they sang a doxology, anyway, a composition in the 8 modes, the 8 basic modes. So I had to play the improvisations in the middle. In the rehearsals, I was searching for things to do, maybe, bring new things here, new things there. But then, as soon as I arrived and went in the church, I immediately felt that I should just step back, play the taxims in the way that I know, that I can play them almost exactly the same after 5 minutes, so in a predictable way, right? But still, so in other words, I put myself behind the music, just supporting the music. And I felt very comfortable with that, and very nice with that. And I felt relieved. And actually, this is where I felt, although I think all this description is really kind of exaggerating Apostolos, but yes, this is where I felt that, okay, I mean, this is the music I know, just do it, just leave the music flow. But on other circumstances, when I'm searching for things, at least myself, well, it becomes personal. It's really personal. It's sorry if it sounds egoistic, or self-centered, but because it's not something that you feel comfortable with. So you have to push yours. It's not a taxi monoshak that you can play, It's something new that you're bringing in, and it's, well, I don't know where it comes from, but still, to me, it feels very personal and very at the moment thing. And usually it arrives, it leaves, and it will never arrive again unless you recollect it from your mind sometimes.
I wanted to ask
Eric.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm asking this because sometimes all the students, they have in mind when they practice, they say, I'm not enough I haven't practiced enough, or some of them that speed too much in some instruments and playing very fast, they said, okay, now I'm the god of music. So we have these different levels. The one level is I'm not practicing, and the other level is I'm very fast, so I'm the god. So, and the humans, we say, Paganini, he's the best violinist, so he has to do with the devil. Or, I mean, all these things is more philosophical, and I want to just to have your idea about how somebody to feel nice with herself, as you said, not as a selfish human, but as a part of the music, a part of the world, and how to get to high levels without being selfish and without being as well a very low self-esteem.
I understand. Yes, it's philosophical, and there are so many things written about it, not only for music. And well, I read behind this because it's a huge chapter. Well, the basic discrimination between Eastern and Western and European philosophy, where on the one side you have the community and you have people acting as parts of a community, while on the other hand you have persons that move forward, and of course they ask for also for the respect of what they have achieved. Well, I'm not going with one or the other side. I understand both of them, but to be honest, I think you need that's what I meant before. It's personal, actually. You need brave people that they will make mistakes. You need the Western egoistic, call it like that, and also self-centered approach for things to change, for new ideas. On the other hand, I respect very much the communities and the way to that communities act and work together. And maybe this is the reason that although my home is the music traditions I described before, now I would only play them in their original form only if there is a community uh, uh, approach to that, for people to sing, to dance, or something else that uh, puts the music in the environment that it should be. If it's on stage, I will, or from the first moment, I will look for things to work on, to arrange, to change, to do my way or my team's way.
Thank you very much, Apostolos, for the questions. We have some people that have raised their hand. I think they.
Eric, for a long time.
Yeah.
Sorry, Christos.
Yeah, no problem. You are the speaker, but I think they will. It will hurt. Eric and then Thomas.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Well, Sokratis, before you mentioned me as an example of very difficult technical music on the violin, but he was also known for his ability to make the violin speak, what they call the suonare parlante. There are some historical evidence that he was able to say buonasera with the violin, and the people in the audience would just answer buonasera when he was playing. Is that something that you try to do on the lira to imitate the human voice and like make the lira speaking? Have you investigated this in your career?
You
This
speak
is my
metaphor.
first question.
Yes.
Sorry.
Eric, just because in the beginning you were breaking, you were talking about Paganini again?
Yes, I was talking about Paganini and Suonare Parlante.
Okay. I'm impressed that Paganini is the most referenced musician in this talk. I didn't expect it. It's okay.
It's personal.
Maybe you can ask. You can answer this first question, and then the second can follow, Eric.
Okay. Yes, the question is metaphorical, right? No, I'm not trying to speak like I didn't know, but like you mentioned, Paganini was imitating the human voice. But metaphorically speaking, right?
And no, it's not metaphorically speaking. It's real. And actually, there's a recording circulating about it's a contrabass player from. It was recorded in the 90s in Italy, and he plays the contrabass. He's one of the last generation of the students of Paganini, and he's able to make the contrabass speak. You can hear sono un contrabbasso. I can send you the recording, you will tell me.
Perfect. But the question was if I'm doing the same thing?
Yes.
Well, I've tried it for fun a couple of times, but not really. But you can do it on a string with a bow if you practice. the movements of the voice. Actually, lately there are several projects of musicians, even some, how do you say, humoristic videos with musicians following the way people talk, even the US president or other people. So it's frequencies. You can imitate or approach the frequencies. But no, I'm not really doing it. I mean, on the other hand, the voice as a reference is always the best reference for any kind of instrument, and especially, well, for both instruments or instruments with continuous sound, but for every instrument. And well, another recent, how can you say, thinking is that, well, trying whenever you deal with songs, I find it very interesting to sing with your instrument, not with a voice, but try to follow exactly what a voice would do. And I realized it's not that simple, uh, at least with bows. So to try to play only what a voice would do, and not uh, put all the ornaments that you would do as a musician. I think that's the end for the first question. You had another one, Eric.
Yes, and my other question is that I think some years ago you did the music for a movie, was Politiki Cozinha, and I was wondering what was this experience of making music for a movie, and have you continued to do this?
Yes, Eric. Look, I didn't, I was not responsible for the music. I didn't compose the music. On the other hand, I was very involved in some parts of the creation where some improvisations were needed. So I'm not the composer of this music, but I was, well, I shaped a little bit, or a big part of it as a musician, and this is what musicians do also. Uh, so I played some improvisations and taksims. I wish well, no, I'm not working with film music. I wish I was actually. The field that I work and which is similar, uh, is some music theater performances with a director that I work with, and once every 2 years there is a new project that we are working on, and I am creating music. So that's the closest thing I do. Where I also try to to put in things that seem new to me, to experiment with new ideas, because I have a field to work. Thank you, Eric. Thomas? Sorry, Christos, I'm the coordinator. I get.
Hello. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes.
So coming back a bit to the talk of before, like more the philosophical thing and the apples and oranges thing and all that. Yeah, just took it. You kind of answered, but I will answer a question now. But still, I want to do the question. So all this situation of the microtonality, the modality, and the mixing with the tempered system instruments and musics and all that. I have heard your albums. I enjoyed them a lot. Also, I have heard Christos albums. I have heard many people doing these kind of things. And I am doing it in my own way. And now I live in Kathmandu. And recently I had some project that some Drupad singer, Drupad is like a style of Hindustani music, asked me to arrange a composition by his that was very, very microtonal. Very Drupad is even more microtonal than the modern styles of Indian music. So it felt like I was wondering all the time about these things that you are talking about. Like this music is nice as it is, like super nice. I don't want to ruin it, like by doing this experiments. But then I think, well, the process is nice. Also, they are asking for it. It's like talking with them and deciding how does it work, what does it work, how much I'm killing it, how much I'm not killing it, like all these questions. And I don't know. It's not a question. It's like a reflection, and I think it's always a thing that traps me, and sometimes it freezes me also. Like I say, no, it's better to leave it like it is, because I won't make it any better, for sure. So how much is an aesthetic result? How much is just the process of experimenting and knowing each other musically and all that? Yeah, that's kind of the reflection.
Yes, Thomas, thank you. That's very interesting and very important what you said. And again, since I'm the guest here, I speak from my point of view, but my own experience. So here we talk about a specific uh, way of working where you have the old music and you want to refresh it, to arrange it, that's the word, right? With other material where I guess verticality is also part of it. Well, I agree that this is difficult and dangerous, and it has to do again with the personal limits that everybody has and puts to himself. Well, I have heard very bad things in this direction. I have heard great things too. Personally, my limits are very, very narrow. And actually, it's the folk music first that I tried to this way to arrange, that I also realized that personally I cannot go any further because it's my home and I don't want to renovate my home in a fancy way. You know, I like it as it is. And actually, this is a good point to mention this. The reason why with the group we work with new compositions is this, because it's a field that we can do whatever we want. I can do whatever I want. It's our stuff. It's not arrangements of folk music that I feel, and I repeat, I don't feel well doing it. It's not about what other people would say. I don't feel comfortable with this. And actually, to be honest, I agree that no matter how far you think I go to other things, when it comes to old music, I'm very, very strict on how far I can go with that. So, on the other hand, now going to a general thing, it's always a challenge to find things that work, and but it's, I think, when you take an old song or tune and you arrange it, I think the path that I would follow is do something that people that know that song would realize it and they will say, okay, this is the song. So things that are not messing up with the core of the whole thing, and it could be just elements that are in the background or embrace the song in your taste, right?
Thomas, I just muted you because the camera was switching. But if you want to add something, Thomas, go ahead.
It was just to talk about it a little bit more, because I don't think there's an answer to that, but getting more perspective is more useful.
Someone else, thank you, Thomas. Someone else would like to comment something or ask something?
Hello.
Hi, SP. Okay. Stella.
Sorry, I'm moving. I'm in the car right now.
It seems you're in the jungle. By the way, Stella is the next speaker in a few months, and she lives in the jungle of.
Well, sorry for the noise right now. So just a brief comment to the previous comment. Talking to Drupal musicians, they often talk about innovation within the tradition of Drupal. So it's a strong question. It's something that they deal a lot with, about how far they should go and how they should innovate around this music. And this was a brief comment because I have been working with Drupal musicians. And the other is, I would like, Sokratis, if you can do that again. Sorry for the repetition. Could you again explain why you believe that all types of music are modal types of music? And sorry for the noise again.
Okay, thank you. So, modal meaning model, not tempered or not tempered, but modes built and connected with a system, in a system. So the more you go back, the more you realize that even traditions that we, first of all, if we forget European music, I mean the classical, because European music is still Spanish country music or Swedish shepherd songs, right? But if you forget this music for a moment, then nowadays all the other world plays modern music. Pentatonic is modal music too, right? It doesn't have to be heptatonic scales. So modal music is not only, it's just how you build modes connected on a system. But now if you add European music too and see the ruins from modality, but still they are there, the uh, major and minor scales in σχετικές, Christo, in reference to a minor third,
relevant.
the relevant major and the relevant minor, still they are there as a ruin of the old modality. But this is what I meant in terms of melodic only. If you think of their melody, of course, I don't talk about the contemporary movements of music from the Romanticism and on, because the idea was there to break the modality, the tonality, or whatever. So, okay, I don't include these modern contemporary movements, but this is what I mean about that all music is modal. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Dennis, I can see you raising your hand. Yeah.
Yes, I just have one interesting comment about all music is modal because when I was at a music camp once years and years ago with lots of different musicians, and I was playing in a Rebettica band. So we were playing totally tempered Rebettica with guitar, bouzouki, baklama. And an Arabic musician who was an expert on Arabic maqams would be listening to our songs, and he would identify what maqam they were in. You know, even just the difference between a major, a rast, and a segya, or a minor and an ushak. He would tell the difference just from the phrasing, just from the phrases of the melody. He could tell what maqam it was in, even though it was all tempered.
Yes, you're right. So supporting the concept that modality is not connected with the tuning. Well, of course, with non-tempered instruments, you can do more things, the old things, be more precise with the tradition, etc., etc. But well, think before temperament, even, which is a new thing, right? It's 300 years old, where there were other. We talk about the equal temperament, right? Where there were other temperaments, all arriving from Europe, trying to tune the harmony, the verticality too. But still, even the tuning was non-tempered. Even in the tradition that we forget, we neglect, we think they're doing something else. They are in another sphere, something different. They just did things that are kind of complicated, and we lost the connection. But yes, I speak too much now. Dennis, yes, this is a good argument that even on a tempered instrument, you can make the makam, and then the modality, I mean. And of course, this is how different schools are created. For example, the Greek school of laiki musiki, of how
Popular.
do you, popular music, which is built on the bouzouki, which is a tempered instrument. Well, they have found ways to, on their taste, of the community's taste, to tune the modes in certain ways that seem non-συμβατές,
Compatible.
compatible historically. Thank you, Christos. But for example, a bouzouki player would say the shak has a semitone as a first interval, for example, from the tonic up. Well, okay, let's don't see the differences, but see the similarities. I mean, everything else is the same, the movements are the same. Sometimes many songs support also the other fret. And then it's a long story. Then this is how the new school of interpretation of the makams, of the, as we call it, the rebetiko school, or the Greek popular music, is created, which is very welcome. It's another evolution of all this tree of modality. That's it's another branch, a possible branch, together with the I don't know, the Turkish makam branch, the Mugam of Azerbaijan, the Iranian Dastgah, and so on and so on.
Sokratis, I have like two questions in mind. The first is more musical. The second is more a bit like, let's say, sociological, political. Did you feel like growing up or like learning traditional music in Greece that it was connected with some kind of an identity, let's say national or even religious? Because this music, as we know, is shared or in different variations in Turkey, in other places in the Middle East, no? And you will say that you were in the school of Domana Samiou that had like a strong also identity of being, let's say, Greek traditional, no? As a did you feel sometimes that what you were doing, like playing, for example, Turkish music, or playing with Iranian musicians, or even playing with sometimes with jazz musicians, was not very well seen, or from let's say people in Greece? In other words, is the music you play, you feel it's related with in some way with identity?
You mean at that time, not now, right?
Both. And so my question would be, at that time, what were maybe the connotations, if there were things that you were thinking about, and nowadays, if this has changed?
Okay, it's a very interesting question with a very complicated answer. I think I'll try to be brief. Well, when I started, nothing of all this. I was just. I don't think I felt in any of these ways that you mentioned. Only remember when I was going out of the circle of people that knew what I was doing, I was a bit shy. Oh, come on! I'm sorry. I don't have the apologies. I was kind of shy to mention that I play traditional music. It was very different times, so it was kind of neglected, all this thing. But this changed rapidly, and then, well, even playing next to Ross Daly, or even with this ethnic jazz group, I felt like being in some circles, you know. And but then, what I thought when you were posing this question is a period in my life where I was established as the political lira player, the lira of Constantinople, and actually as the only player in Athens and in Greece, actually doing it in a professional way. I was very young, 18, 20. And for the next years, I remembered, now that you talked about this feeling of responsibility to my community that I mentioned before, to the circle of musicians, and that since I was the only one who was playing this instrument, a historic instrument with a very important tradition of room of Greeks of Istanbul in Istanbul, but broken tradition for this line. The last player died before I was born in Athens. Anyways, so I felt the responsibility. I remember this. I felt the, what do you say, the weight of all these people that were expecting from me to support the instrument in its old way. And there were, maybe this is why I needed more time to feel ready to search for other things out of this narrow world of the style of the instrument. So this is interesting. Luckily, I'm not feeling that anymore, because there are, well, few compared to other instruments, but still great players. And so it's moving on, and the more players they arrive, the more free I feel. So it's the end of this. The responsibility is over. Yeah. Yeah.
And some of them are your students, I suppose. If
Yes.
all of them.
Yes. True.
Okay, and the other question was, of course, I'm sure there are many things to talk about your experience with making music, like traveling and meeting other musicians and different situations of making music where it's not your, strictly speaking, your home. I liked very much what you talked about the community. I think it makes so much sense to me that when you play for a community, you also feel that it maybe in some words it's enough to do the music as it feels natural, no, without complicated much more. In all this experience, you talked a bit more from the point of view of, okay, reaching your limits, trying things, and then like the limitations. Could you say that, could you speak about what it gave you in terms of learning something new, or seeing music maybe in a different way? Because I guess when you play the Kemense, the Politiki Lira with your quartet, or when you're recording with the ECM, I guess also people in concerts or in the recording studio, they listen in a different way, no? I don't know if you would like to speak about your experience of working with Manfred Eicher, that is a producer that produced and influenced a lot of music that is happening like in the classical, let's say, contemporary or jazz, all this kind of musical world.
Okay, just grabbing the end of your question about working, well, working with a producer of this level, I would say, of this thinking, of this approach. Well, it was very, how do you say, apocalyptico, very difficult.
Captures?
Well, there were many things.
Revealing.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Anyway, because it was not about music. It was not about music technical things. It was just about a narration. And I remembered again things that when I was very, very young, I was searching in music, but then I suddenly had forgotten all of these things because, I don't know, I went with the flow, So it was about, it was about a narration of a full album, for example, things that were forgotten. I mean, having a beginning and a middle part and an ending, and having a form as a whole album of 1 hour of music listened from the beginning to the end. So it was all about the narration and the images, more like a filmmaking than music. So technically we left so many things without edit because he asked for it. I sometimes I regret for some things, but no, I followed his idea. So it was very uh, it so nice for me to work this way and to remember how music should be, which is actually very close to uh, the, the the way that you perceive music as a listener and not as a musician. That was what it was all about.
In the end, it is about composition, no? Because I mean, I remember also from the few times we've collaborated in the university also that I remember that your even if you're not as you said before, you're not composing a lot, or in the quartet you bring sketches, but I remember that your sense of composition of how to arrange a concert is very strong. It's very you have many a clear idea about how to narrate something.
Yes, I like that. Yes, I'm working on that. I wish I could work more on composition too, as I wish I could work more on my p- personal, technique evolution, etc., etc. Unfortunately, it's well, half of my life is the university, not only the time spent there, but also the time at home and thinking about all this. I love it too. I know it takes out, so I'm not a musician like other guys like you guys, some of you at least. I mean, it's not so. Uh, anyway, it's not composition, and this is why I put all my efforts in improvisation. So, it, whenever there are no new things composed, it's all improvisation is always a start to fix things, and then if you arrive at a point where you feel they are mature and you are ready, then personally I put them in order and create some ideas that I call them composition later.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and also because I mean I have the maybe the luxury of being able to compose more because I'm not teaching in a university.
I'm jealous of you. That's why I was.
I ran away.
You're the one. Yes.
I ran away. But for example, the last concert I've heard live of you, the duet with Derya, with Derya Turkan in Brussels, the composition of the concert was really good. I mean, thinking about composition, not like a specific piece, but the way you put together the different elements of an artifact, no, be it one piece or one concert or even ideas. The way you present something. Actually, it's a proposal, it's a composition. So the way you brought different elements in it, and the way it was very interesting. So yeah.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that because yes, I liked that too with Deria. And you know what? Half of it was not, well, half of it was pre-arranged, but the other half was not. And it was on our improvisations that, and we are very close with Deria. We share the same vision. So through improvisation, we put the elements needed to create a narration, a full narration. And by the way, I another musician that has surprised me with this kind of thinking is Charles Lloyd, the saxophone player, and the jazz saxophone player. That I have seen him also arranging on the spot this a concert in order with his improvisations, or how he, because it's happening on stage, who will take the solo and who will do the lead, whatever, how he directs real-time things interacting with the audience. Okay, this is another level, right? But still creating a narration which it really fits, and it doesn't have angles, or if there are angles, there is a reason for them to be there. But it is a narration with dynamics and without repetitions. It's not boring. It can really go up until the end, and like a nice fairy tale. I don't know what a narration. Yes.
Can I ask something more, please?
Apostolos.
Socrates, do you feel that is there something missing or a gap after jazz? I mean, jazz has the way to improvise and to make things happen. But could we have, let's say, an Eastern jazz with, I mean, more? Of course, we have, but is there a space for a new theory, as the jazz theory, Ioni and Dorian? Is there some space for the to mix the as you said, the horizontal and the
Vertical.
vertical, but to make something new, or everything is here and there's no new theory and no new jazz for somebody.
Okay, understand the question. By the word jazz, you mean something contemporary music in a way, something
Yeah.
that will arrive in you. Well, I don't know. I don't have a way to do it, but I think many people are researching and experimenting with things, and I don't really know how the music that we know now will sound in 200 years for sure, and how much all this interaction will have arrived or not. I don't know. I don't know what to say, but for sure, there's new material needed for this purpose, for this direction. New compositions that will keep the elements of the Makam traditions, the Eastern traditions, and also bringing in new ideas. But in terms of in technical terms, like that you mentioned names of modes and I don't know, verticality. I don't really know. But really, there is a movement of people looking for something. I feel maybe I'm part of them too, but I think it's too early. And on the other hand, I don't think that we need that for sure. So it's not one man's choice this time. It's a community that will. It's all of us, right? That will suggest things, criticize things that other people suggest, adapt them or not. So this is how music moved on for centuries, I think. It is just now that you have so much information to filter, which makes things complicated and we get lost in all this information. Sophia is not Sophia. Who is Sophia? Irini. Yes, Irini.
Ειρήνη, πρέπει να είσαι μυτωρισμένη τώρα, ναι.
But do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Hello to all. Thank you, Sokratis, for the presentation. I arrived a bit late, so I don't know if you talked about this, but you mentioned before a bit about the arrangement lessons that you were doing in the university or in a seminar. And I wanted to ask if you prioritize something specifically for this curriculum in the arrangement lessons, and if you have a specific goal that you want to pass on to the musicians that you teach.
I don't teach orchestration anymore, But okay, Irene talks about our classes in the university some years ago, where there was an experimental class, orchestration of traditional instruments, right? And well, as you remember, Irene, it was not so much about, because we said before, maybe before you arrived, I said my personal view, which changes, of course, during time, that I will not mess up so much with the old repertoire. I would prefer, this is why I work on new things, feeling free to do more experiments, right? But you talk about a time that I think you remember, it was not about demolishing the material, or I mean, not in a way. It was about taking elements of it. It was more about and giving more light to some hidden corners, a rhythmical riff that was hidden in a melody, or things like that. Or and the other one was again about narration, right? It was about starting from a song that talks about the rose tree, for example. What can we combine with that? Another song which shares the same lyric, or a dance which is connected with some way with the rose, or with the flowers, or with the field. So it was, again, now that I remember it, thank you for bringing it back again. It was not about putting chords on there, right? No. Or crazy backgrounds. Anyway, we didn't have any electronics involved. It was all natural instruments. It was about narrating, and yes, now I remember that. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, narration and, I mean, as I've heard before, for sure, improvisation is a big part for you, for arrangement.
Yes. And if you remember, also we worked a lot on different approaches of improvisation, and how we improvise for the piece and not on the modes, but you introduce the elements of the music that you're going to play.
Okay, thank you.
Someone else would like to ask something? Maybe we can go towards the end of the talk.
Dennis, I think, has a last question. Yes.
Dennis, yeah. Okay.
I'll try to keep it short, but something you said a while ago really stuck with me. Talking about just losing yourself in the music, or that sense of ecstasy that you get sometimes. And for me, that's why I play music, but for those moments. But it's also why I listen to music. I want when the musicians are experiencing that is when I love it the most. And for me, that's why some of this, jazz fusion or whatever, some of that's what it's missing sometimes. Even though I go hear this stuff and I like it, if the musicians are not, coming from that place, at least sometimes that's what I'm missing in more, the new stuff.
Thank you, Dennis, for your comments. Yes, you are absolutely right. It's not happening only to the musician or singer or whoever. It's a community thing again. And actually, I was thinking if it happens to me when I am alone. No, I cannot give an answer, but for sure I remember the times that it has happened. It was when I was sharing this, not only with other musicians, colleagues, but also with the audience, call it like that. So yes, it's very interesting how the connection that is happening. And yes, now about the fusion jazz that you mentioned, well, maybe other people would say I can still connect. Okay, maybe this is because they can go over the barrier of what you like and what you don't like about music, right? To end with, starting again and ending with this brilliant title that Christos thought, Apples and Oranges. So, his idea was apples and oranges, question mark, right? Because I didn't know that apples and oranges in English means things that are not connected and are put together. But when I read it, you know what came to my mind, Christos? Before you explained the meaning, I said, oh, lovely. So how apples and oranges, they sound so connected. Personally, during the winter time mostly, that's my afternoon meal, apples and oranges together. They go very well and they make a great juice. So to end with things that look controversial, well, we can be connected, in my point of view. These for no reason has to be the goal for everybody, but it's a need only. I mean, only if you feel that you need, and we realize that also it comes also from the background of each one of us, and what is your personal background and what things you need to connect or not connect. And well, it's an open project. I think everything that we do, from starting from supporting the old styles and traditions, this is great and very demanding too, and our home, for example, and all other things that we try to do to find ourselves through music and to lose ourselves in music as musicians and as listeners. And apples and oranges, Christos. Yes.
Thank you very much, Sokratis. Could I make a coda? Because I was like thinking what you said before, and it's something that also coming from a live festival of Labyrinth, it is on my mind the last days and weeks about the community and the individual. And sometimes we're talking like coming from Greece and traveling abroad, or sometimes before when you mentioned community, like the community is very strong in Greece, no? And the music is obviously an expression of the community because you have oral traditions and don't have composers, no? In the traditional music, at least. And how sometimes we refer to Europe or the Western world like representing individuality, not like the individual is more in the forefront, no? And I was thinking, to what degree is this totally true, and if it's fair also for the Western world, but also for us. And I was wondering about you said it before that we need like brave individuals to make mistakes and go forward, no? But I was thinking also my experience living in Spain and Catalonia and traveling abroad is that many times you have very strong communities that work in a very, very healthy way. And many times I've seen that in Greece, instead of, or because the communities are strong, maybe there's not so much space, a healthy space and a vital space for the individual to do something else, no? And I wanted to bring this thing that Brian Eno says about the genius, because in the video he's talking about the genius, no? And he says that we should look also the individual as the expression of a community of a scene, no? Of your musical or scene, that without the group you don't have an individual. And I was wondering if you've come across this, communities in Europe that also make music in a, let's say, in a live way, and it's not so much egoistical or.
Yes, very nice coda. And now I go back to Senyo. What do I do? We could end there. But, well, first of all, I didn't place myself in one or the other, right? I understand both, and I believe I can follow both. And, well, yes, I would answer yes to your last question without being misunderstood as being arrogant, but please connect it with the responsibility I was talking about with the instrument, which is never forgotten. It's still there. Of course, it's there, and the respect to all the people I feel we live together. Wow. I was ready to say me, which is very bad. Like my teachers who are still alive, but also people that I have heard, especially the musicians of the instrument that the old musicians that recorded. So yes, it's a community, even if it's the real-time community or something that I feel I continue in a way as one more piece of the chain of music, and especially of the lira players. Let's call my chain like that.
Yeah, and I feel, I mean, that people like you or people are like Ross Daly also sometimes. So I don't know if I would say show the way, but also create new communities in the sense that from these steps outside the tradition or between traditions, you can have creation of new communities. Like, for example, Labyrinth is such one example, no?
Of course, you're absolutely right. Yes. So we go back to, it's not that strict as I described before, but again, in the in the communities, you need people to uh, uh, to influence, to
Yeah. Να
get.
επηρεάσουν.
Yes, and on the other hand, like of course in West there is not. It was too narrow what we said. It's not like that.
Yeah,
Of
no,
course,
I'm not
in the
saying you
West,
represent it. I'm not
yes.
saying you said it, but we have it many times in the back of our mind, and especially coming from Mediterranean, like, oh, I go there and everybody's like individualistic, no? And yeah.
Nice coda, Christos.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Socrates. Thank you, everyone, for your.
Thank you all for joining, and well, I hope it was worth for everybody things to think about music and ourselves. And good luck to everybody. Hope to see you soon. Some of you I will maybe soon, and I hope to see all of you sometime live soon.
Maybe we can also comment that you will be giving a seminar this summer in Greece, where you will be teaching something more personal, right? Like more, also, for example, the lira, but it's an invitation from Ross to be centered in more personal repertory, right?
Yes, it's true. Although the one that we have already planned for the second week of July in Crete with Rose, it's instrument centered, so it's lira centered. But well, it's open to all instruments, and I always find a way to be happy with everybody, and so so it's not. I will work with some of my music too, which especially the tunes that have started from the lira, and but there we will talk about creating music too. But that would not be the basic, the core of the workshop. But again, a workshop which will be shaped as when I know exactly who is attending.
Very nice. Thank you, Socrates. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.